Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, today I will be discussing NATO's role in the fight against piracy of the Horn of Africa, and I'll try to be brief to leave many time for the questions and answer session, which I am sure many of you are expecting. But before beginning, I would like to thank the organizers at the Institute for International Affairs and the International Institute of Humanitarian Law, whose hard work has made this conference possible. The theme of our program highlights the role of the international community in fighting piracy. NATO embraces the concept of cooperative security in the maritime domain and believes that broad international engagement is indeed critical in eradicating piracy. And we appreciate the attention that this conference brings to bear on the subject. I would also like to extend NATO's appreciation to the Italian Ministry of Defense for hosting us here at the Center for Advanced Defense Studies. So thank you very much. Counter-piracy initiatives in the Indian Ocean have been highly successful. It should not be forgotten that less than 3 years ago, the scale of the threat was truly alarming. By the end of January 2011, 30 merchant vessels had been hijacked, with over 700 hostages held. Ransom payments peaked at over $150 million a year, further incentivizing pirate financiers and operatives. The contrast is stark. Today, there are no ships held and a total of 50 hostages on shore. It has been 18 months since the most recent successful hijacking took place. To trace the declining slope, there were 45 successful pirate hijackings of the coast of Somalia in 2009, 45 in 2010, 24 in 2011, 8 in 2012, and none at all since May 2012. NATO's role in this story dates back to October 2008, when UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon specifically requested our assistance in escorting World Food Programme ships through the region. At the time, Somali piracy was causing serious damage to both international trade and humanitarian aid. World Food Programme ships had recently been attacked by rocket-propelled grenades, crippling UN efforts to feed up to a million people in Somalia and throughout Eastern Africa. In the light of the persistent danger, NATO's mission evolved beyond an escort role, and in March 2009, Operation Allied Protector was born, a more robust presence which not only escorted the World Food Programme ships, but conducted surveillance and deterrence patrols as well. In August 2009, Operation Ocean Shield came into force, establishing a continuous NATO maritime presence of the Horn of Africa as mandated by the UN Security Council. Indeed, all NATO counter-piracy initiatives have been conducted in full conformity with international law. On the 2nd of June 2008, UN Security Council Resolution 1816 first authorized states to combat piracy off the coast of Somalia. This authorization has been renewed as necessary ever since. On 16 December 2008, the Security Council passed Resolution 1851, which called on states to form an international cooperation mechanism to facilitate all aspects of the fight against piracy. As a result, the Contact Group on Piracy of the Coast of Somalia was founded in January 2009. The Contact Group is a very special organization. I have never seen personally before an international body that brings together such a broad cross-section of the international community. Australia, Brazil, China, India, Russia, all sitting at the same table and with such a tightly focused and unified purpose, that is to fight piracy. NATO's footprint of the Horn of Africa is modest. In terms of force profile, Operation Ocean Shield normally has between 3 and 5 ships committed at any given time, and intermittently operates maritime patrol aircraft as well. NATO conducts its counter-piracy operations with one of our 2 standing NATO maritime groups, the workhorses of our naval forces. This is something we have also to think about. As we couldn't have proper resources for the operation, we have to draw from the standing NATO maritime groups, which is also showing the lack of resources. Governments are ready to put, on maritime and especially in the fight against piracy. All vessels are provided on a voluntary and rotational basis, and currently NATO has 4 ships from the standing NATO Maritime Group 1 in the region. We also had a Danish patrol aircraft based in the Seychelles, but it was withdrawn last week. So this also is something we are now missing. Today, the flagship and command are currently provided by Norway, and you have US, Danish, and Ukrainian participation. 4 ships in an area the size of Western Europe sounds like a very small drop in a very big ocean. So what explains our success in reducing piracy rates? The answer, in a word, is cooperation. International collaboration has been absolutely fundamental to containing the pirate threat. As I just mentioned, NATO usually has between 3 and 5 ships deployed in the region. However, coordination with our partners means that between 10 and 15 ships are usually on patrol. Executed carelessly, multiple counter-piracy deployments could have resulted in redundancy and duplication. However, close cooperation at all levels had instead created invaluable synergies, which is very paradoxical. But it has increased interoperability, it has expanded situational awareness, and it has strengthened relationships. Not only is this model a positive step forward for cooperative security, it's also good value for money, which nations appreciate in an age of austerity. Until recently, Operation Ocean Shield was exclusively an allied operation, with no other nations than allied countries participating. But a Ukrainian ship currently participates in the operation. NATO was proud to welcome this first ever partner contribution last month, and New Zealand will shortly be joining as well. As you know, in Afghanistan, we have many partners working side by side with us, but that's a first. And I think you know that maybe Australia or Japan are considering joining also in the near future. NATO's counter-piracy cooperation has a broad scope, encompassing allies as well as partners and other international forces. NATO has vital relationships in the region with the EU-led Operation Atalanta, with US-led combined maritime forces, and with independent deployers from many countries, including China, India, Japan, Korea, Pakistan, and Russia, and many others. Facilitated by the contact group on piracy of the coast of Somalia and the shared awareness and deconfliction mechanism, what we talked about before called SHADE, our common efforts tend to proceed very smoothly. This smooth cooperation means that piracy rates are sharply down. The international community has effectively treated the symptoms of the disease, which is no small accomplishment. However, in the field of medical science, as you all well know, symptomatic treatments are sometimes considered dangerous, since they can make us forget or dismiss the underlying reasons for our pain. And the international community must avoid this mistake in the Horn of Africa and move to attack the root causes of piracy, poverty, instability, and institutional weakness. In this regard, we consider a focus on regional capacity building as critical. The UN Development Programme's strategic plan reminds us that capacity building is the best insulation against destabilizing shocks to a nation, and Somalia has certainly had its share of those. With this in mind, NATO engages in regional capacity building efforts within means and capabilities, particularly during port visits, training Coast Guard personnel, offering ship protection advice, etc. We also have reached out to others for support, conducting regional capacity building work in cooperation with International Maritime Organization and with the NATO Maritime Interdiction Operational Training Center in Crete. However, 3 important caveats must be noted. Firstly, NATO is not primarily a capacity building organization. Other actors are more appropriate for this task. The United Nations, the European Union, civil society and private industry all have scope and multiple tools for developing their capacity building roles. While not negligible, NATO's efforts are just one piece of a large pie. And secondly, achieving results in regional capacity building takes effort and time. You cannot develop an impartial judiciary or train a professional Coast Guard overnight. Finally, the situation in Somalia remains very fragile, meaning that Mogadishu is often unwilling or unable to pull its own weight. NATO remains open to joint capacity building ventures, but needs to remain creative and flexible in order to engage effectively within our budget constraints. This will likely mean the development of further partnerships, Pursuing a capacity-building partnership with the UN Office on Drugs and Crime is just one possibility. NATO could also consider further developing its relationship with the African Union. Somalia badly needs broad international engagement. Its GDP per capita is $284 US, and it remains among the lowest in the world, and almost 3/4 of the population live below the poverty line of $2 US per day. Political immaturity, regional conflict, and the persistent violence of Al-Shabaab weigh Mogadishu down as it tries to climb the ladder of development. The traditional Somali proverb states that poverty is slavery. If this is so, much of the country is in chains. We should also bear in mind that pirates are not just mindless savages, but rational economic actors, some of whom are responding to necessity out of desperation. A recent World Bank report quotes a former pirate as saying he would never have started had he been involved in a decent job. Another said he turned to piracy when his friends stopped lending him money. An empty stomach is a powerful motivator. With Somalia struggling to stand on its own, a resurgence of piracy cannot be ruled out. Dr. Jarat Chopra, coordinator of the Somalia-Eritrea Monitoring Group, has pointed out that networks facilitating piracy have moved to other forms of crime, such as drug and human trafficking, as piracy has been suppressed. But they will return to piracy if international efforts are relaxed. Like the Dutch story of the boy who saved his country by plugging a dam with his finger, the international community has patched up the piracy crisis. But what will happen when we remove our fingers? Piracy is by no means a solved problem. We continue to see both off the east and west coasts of Africa the results of instability on shore, driving men to careers in crime at sea. The challenge facing the international community remains creating conditions wherein there is no longer seen as a viable option. Conditions wherein strong institutions govern the country and gainful employment for all Somalis is a reality and not a dream. We are not widely idealistic. The holistic approach is promising, but will require long-term dedication over the course of many years. In the meantime, complacency is not an option. If the international community allows a security vacuum to develop in and off Somalia, the consequences could include a return to the maritime anarchy of the mid-2000s. At a time of international community fatigue, it is partners that remind us of the critical importance of maritime security, which is also another paradox. Operation Ocean Shield's mandate currently extends through the end of 2014. Discussions on the future of NATO's counter-piracy involvement began this autumn. So far within NATO, there appears to be a general consensus that some continued presence is needed. A focused Indian Ocean presence during piracy high season may be the answer. This would retain a deterrent capability while diminishing the costs of the operation. The European Union, with whom, as I said, we work very closely, is also considering the future of its Operation Atalanta mission this winter. Given the strong links between our two operations in theater, many allies believe it is important that both reviews proceed in parallel. This synchronized review further underscores our real interdependency in the maritime theater. Decisions on both reviews are due in early 2014. As Cicero famously remarked, pirates are the common enemy of all. In recent years, this universal opposition has led to a level of international cooperation that is both rare and excellent. The productive collaboration of so many institutional actors is in itself a success story. Going forward, the real challenge remains addressing the root causes of piracy on shore. Regional capacity building is the key to success. And to this end, NATO will be proud to continue working alongside its international partners. Given that 90% of global trade travels by sea, it is in every nation's interest to ensure that the maritime highways of the world remain safe, secure, and free. Thank you very much for your attention.